Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
The name Padraig O'Ceidigh is synonymous with Aer Arann, but over the past 23 years, he has developed a reputation for starting and growing businesses across a myriad of industries. And not being a man to shy away from a new challenge, last year he entered the world of politics. Padraig, you're probably best known to our listeners as the man behind Aer Arann Express and Aer Lingus Regional, but your entrepreneurial experience has actually spanned a wide spectrum of sectors.
Well, Karl, I found out, or I was told a good few years ago, that there are two types of entrepreneurs. And I don't mean good ones and bad ones. I mean, there are a mono-entrepreneur and a serial entrepreneur. A mono-entrepreneur goes after one business and she or he focuses on that business and that's it. A serial entrepreneur can have multiple businesses, and that's actually what really gets them up in the morning, the diversity of different businesses and different industries. And I would be one of those serial entrepreneurs. Apparently, something like only 2% of all entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. So it's a kind of a difficult badge to wear and to hold on your chest.
Now, irrespective of the sector, what are the most important factors for you when trying to grow a business in Ireland?
Yeah, there are two absolutely key factors that are important to get as right as you can. One are the people. You got to do your best to get the people who can embody an entrepreneurial culture. That's really, really important. And what I mean by embodying an entrepreneurial culture, they got to be willing to understand kind of shifts and movements that the founder does in relation to his or her business. Because when you've set up an entrepreneurial business, you got to change the goalposts pretty fast when you need to change them. You cannot procrastinate, and your team have got to move with you and shift with you. So you got to have a like-minded team and a very committed team, a very professional team and an agile team. That's number one. The other thing that's really fundamental is that you've got to understand risk. And risk can be a very subjective factor. And risk has got to do with, for example, subsections of risk. It's what industry are you going to get involved in? Like, for example, somebody told me a couple of years ago, I wish to God they told me 20 years ago, but they didn't. The highest risk business to be in is aviation industry. That more money has been lost in aviation since the Wright brothers flew their first airplane than in any other industry. So you kind of say, what industry will I go in? What are the risks associated with this industry? What's the risk of failure and what's the opportunity of success? And that actually helps you say, I'll go into this industry or the other industry. The other section then within that risk factor is what are the particular risks in the industry? And then you're starting going in, you look at your competition, what are the opportunities? A lot of people would say, wow, there's a gap in the market for the business I want to start. I've mentored a whole lot of business people and entrepreneurs in my day. Padraig, a great idea. There's a gap in the market here. The question really is there a market in the gap? In other words, do you have a big enough market? Can you get a big enough market? Is the market controlled by one or two or three players that will block you out, that will not prevent you from getting into the market?
Now, I know that you define entrepreneurs as people who find a problem and generate a solution. With that in mind, exactly. I would like to take you back to 1994 when you took over Aer Arann. What was the problem and what solution did you develop?
Okay. The problem was that the airline, there was little air service to the three Aran Islands, and it was being managed effectively remotely by a businessman over in Manchester. And he had a lot of other businesses on his plate at the time and mainly in construction. So he was unable to properly manage this local business. And as a result, the business was seriously struggling. And if it had got, I felt, local management, local leadership who understood the people of the Aran Islands and understood the needs of the service, then it would have a much, much better chance of success. So the problem was the leadership and management was in a different country, which didn't suit the type of business that was there. And therefore they weren't able to understand the market demand or react to market demand as it changed. Me living locally, I was able to actually, or I hope that I bring that type of knowledge, that type of awareness, that type of closeness to the Air Ireland model that was at the time, flying to the island.
Now, over the next 12 years, the airline grew to the point where it was carrying 1 million passengers a year and had launch routes into the UK and France. But in 2006, you made the decision to step back from Air Ireland. What triggered this move?
Wow. You've done your homework on me. In 2006, I pulled back from running Air Ireland. I suppose there were a couple of things. One is the company, I wanted the company to grow to the next level. And I remember one Sunday morning, there was a couple of reasons here, but this is one. I did out a list of all of my senior management team, and I said, does each person have the skill set, the ability, the interest, the drive, the energy to help move this to the next stage? It's like a kind of a junior hurling team, and now you're playing on a senior pitch, and you're playing senior teams. It's the same rules, same ball, same referee, everything the same, but a different game. So who can move up into that space? And I figured that most of my staff were. But you know who I didn't look at all? I didn't look at myself. I said, who the hell do I think I am? Do I have the ability to do this? Do I have the experience to do this? Do I have the knowledge to do this? Because I need to start with myself, if I'm objective. And I asked myself the question, why would I stay on as CEO if I needed somebody with different skill sets were needed? And the only reason I'd stay on is because of ego, power and control. So I asked myself the question, is this company based around me, or is the company a totally separate, independent entity to me that I want the company to succeed regardless what? My answer was, the company is a totally different entity to me. It's not about me. So I will get somebody into the company who's got the skill sets and abilities to build this company that I don't have. That was one reason. Another reason is because I put so much effort into it, Karl, in the previous years, that my energy level was down. I knew myself I wasn't able to give it the absolute commitment that it needed.
Now, many of our listeners will probably remember the chaos which the volcanic ash cloud caused back in 2010. But how detrimental was this to Air Ireland?
That was a huge issue for us. Really, as a result of that was, I suppose, the final nail in the coffin for the airline in 2010. Who would have thought that a volcanic ash eruption thousands of miles away in Iceland could actually close airlines all over Europe? And actually, literally, we were not the only airline that got into a pretty difficult financial situation, and that the vast majority of regional airlines like us in Europe either closed down or struggled to survive. So I decided to put the company into examinership because I believed that the company, there was great staff in the company, it had serious potential, but because of factors outside of our control, it made the company as it was unviable, and we needed to restructure. So we got the support of the High Court to do that and restructured. I got external investors in, and from there went to restructure the company again. I agreed to stay on as chairman of the board. I ended up with 10% of the company, and last January, February, I actually sold that 10%. So I don't have any shareholding or any involvement in the airline now. It's called Stobart Air now. Now,
you mentioned, how did you respond to the increased competition which Michael O'Leary brought to your door?
When you're competing with the likes of Ryanair and Michael O'Leary as an individual, you cannot compete head-on. You just literally cannot because of their size. I've huge regard and respect for Michael O'Leary and as an Irishman, and for Ryanair and what they've done. And I really do, and I will continue to do so. Competition is competition. You make your bed and you lie in it to get off the Cork-Dublin route. And what happened since then is that when Ryanair had burnt us off, they stopped the route then, so there's no service between Cork and Dublin.
And during your time in Air Ireland, Padraig, what was your relationship with Michael O'Leary like?
I didn't see him very often. I met him a couple of times. It was fine. It was okay. He couldn't, I think one of the first meetings I had with him, he couldn't understand why I got involved in the airline business. And he told me if I had any sense I'd get out of it and I wouldn't stay in it. And I really felt that he meant that totally genuinely. He had no axe to grind or anything at all like that. I found him very direct. Outside of business, I believe that Michael O'Leary is a is good fun, great crack, a good social person, and so on and so forth. So, but he's a very, very tough, demanding business person who makes decisions on what he wants, and that's it. In the story, take it or leave it kind of style. And what you see on television and what you hear of interviews with him on the radio is, from my experience, very much what Michael O'Leary is.
After leaving the aviation sector, you entered the world of healthcare by opening a nursing home and then setting up a home care business. But what attracted you to the healthcare sector?
Okay. In relation to the nursing home sector, my father, God be good to me before he died, he had spent some time in a nursing home. And I actually felt that, look, I think I might be able to provide a better service in nursing homes. And what kind of a service would I like my father to have got? So I started looking at that, and I started doing some work in that space. And that's what led me into looking at nursing homes. In relation to home care, before my father went to a nursing home, he was getting some home care, but very sparse home care. And we live in Connemara. And we had a big problem in getting home care to our house in Connemara because it's a rural area. And quite frankly, the home care businesses were very interested in providing services in places like Galway City or maybe New Ross or Waterford City or someplace like that. But we're not really interested in going out the country because a carer will spend maybe an hour with my father, but they might have to drive 20 minutes or a half an hour, 5 or 6 miles down the road to take care of the next person, and a few more miles to take care of the next person. So economically, it was kind of difficult for the existing home care businesses and franchises to actually provide a service and make money for it. So I decided there's a need here. I'm going to set up the business, and I'll hopefully see if it's financially successful. But the initial purpose of the home care in Connemara was to provide a service to people of the region who had difficulty in getting that service from the existing home care provider.
Now, last year you were appointed as a senator by Enda Kenny, but I understand that it was actually your son that informed you about this news.
That's a kind of a funny story. Yeah, I got a phone call from Micheál Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil, and he told me that he could suggest 3 names to the Taoiseach Enda Kenny as 3 of the Taoiseach's 11 nominees. He made it clear to me that it's not his call, Micheál Martin's call, but it's Enda Kenny's call. So Enda Kenny may or may not select me. So I was quite frankly humbled and very appreciative of what Micheál Martin said and felt maybe I might be able to contribute. And I told him that. But I said, look, I need to talk to my wife and family about this. And he says, well, do, but don't tell anybody else because the Taoiseach may not pick you. But if he is going to pick you, he's going to phone you tomorrow, Friday. He's got to phone you by early afternoon because he has to name his 11 nominees in the floor of the Dáil by 3 or 4 o'clock or something that Friday evening. And if for some reason your family decide that you shouldn't take this opportunity, well, you can tell the Taoiseach because he would have a list of people, the long of his arm, of people who want to become and would lobby him to become senator. So don't worry about it. And I said, great, thanks. I said, look, I'll talk to my family. I spoke to my wife and 3 daughters, and kind of the consensus around the fireplace at home was, geez, Dad, you're pretty busy in business and that you've 250 plus staff. You're talking about growing the businesses and all that kind of stuff. And will you have time for all of this? And will you put more stress on yourself? So my sense was not to take it if Enda Kenny phoned me. Anyway, Friday came. I was stuck in traffic outside the Mescal Hotel around 5 o'clock on that Friday evening. I'm down the canal, and my son phones me from Chicago. We have a business out there, and he says, Dad, why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? He said, you're a senator. I said, I'm not a senator. He says, you are. I said, I'm not. How do you know? He said it's on Twitter. So that's how I became a senator.
And Padraig, it's been over a year since the appointment. So what is your impression of politics in Ireland now?
Number one, politicians work really hard. They work a lot harder than what I realised. Number two, the vast majority of politicians mean well. They really want to make a difference. They want to do good. Number three, the media have a much greater influence on politicians than what I ever realised. And most of the media know that and understand that. So a lot of politicians react to what's in the media, which is not the way politicians should react or the way the country should be run. I'm not saying the whole country is run like that, but certainly politicians react strongly to the media. Unfortunately, populism is still a big, big factor in Ireland. And the reason being is because that's how people get elected. They want to get votes. In actual fact, I think the first day I landed, I just said I'm a year, I landed up in Leinster House. I got lost in one of the corridors. And who would I see walking down towards me but the two Healy Rays from Kerry? They saw me and they started walking to me and they were smiling and they were saying, Jesus, fair play to you, you're welcome. Great to see you, an entrepreneur up here. Good man. I said, thanks, lad, thanks. But I said, I have a problem. And any problem, we'll help you out. Just let us know. I said, how do I get out of this place? Well, honest to goodness, they started rolling on the carpet. Not that it's great carpet. I can't understand you at all. There are people who have been 20 years trying to get in here. You're only in here one day, you're trying to get out. What kind of man you are at all? You're bloody correct. They said, turn down there, turn right, then turn left, and you'll see sunshine and follow that. But they also said to me, the most important thing for you now, and any politician will tell you this, from day one, what you're after, you got to make sure you get re-elected. And I said, I'm not kind of interested in getting re-elected, so I'm not. That's not really what I'm after. Well, there's a time will tell, you'll want to get re-elected, and make sure you get re-elected. And that's why the politicians, in my view, get caught up on populism and get caught up in media reaction and that, which is unfortunate. The other thing I'd say about the whole system is that the whole civil service system, and this is not a negative about civil servants, there are a lot of really, really good civil servants who are as committed to what they do in our country as me or you or anybody else. But the system under which they work is flawed and broken. And as John Wayne once said, I think in True Grit, the best thing you can do on a dead horse is to get off. Our system is, our process and systems and the way we run our country, in my view, is broken, is not effective. We need to reinvent it. And the people who are most frustrated with this are, one, the politicians, two, the civil servants who have to work on a defunct system, and as a result, the public do not get the quality of service that they're entitled to, or quite frankly, that they pay for.
And Padraig, in your opinion, do we need more business people to become involved in politics? And why do you think that there's a hesitancy amongst the business community to do so?
Yeah, we hugely need more business people to be involved in politics. It's absolutely it's the single biggest weakness in relation to the sectoral involvement in politics is lack of business people. Hugely so. I think it would make a hugely positive difference to our country if we had a lot more business people involved. Why not do so? There's a couple of reasons. One is my business has suffered because of my involvement in politics in the Shannon. And that's not as much of an involvement as a TD would have. I don't do clinics or any of that stuff, because I haven't been voted in. And I don't have any particular interest in going for the Dáil or anything like that again. So it's hugely time consuming. You're at people's beck and call. You could be out for a drink and somebody, or out for dinner with your wife or your husband, and people come up to you and say, look, what about this, that or the other, or I want this, or I'm trying to do something else. So there's no privacy. There's very little kind of downtime for yourself, no matter where you are. And your business definitely will suffer. And the other thing is, quite frankly, is overall, the media can have a much bigger focus on you and trying to analyse your accounts and where you're at and what you're doing and all of that type of thing than if you were not in business and in politics. So you can bring a spotlight on yourself that can be negative. So they're very valid reasons why business people would not get involved in politics.
Finally, I read an article in April last where you hinted that you might put yourself forward as a presidential candidate next year. So are you going to confirm your intention to run for the Áras with us this morning?
No, I'm not going to confirm it. Let me tell you where that came from. The reporter from the Sunday Business Post who wants to do an interview with me about the water committee. We're all finished and that. And he told me that he heard that I might be a candidate for the presidency. And I said, no, that's not true. I have no particular plans for the presidency or anything at all like that. All I'm interested in, quite frankly, was getting the water done and basically taking it from there. So I don't have any plans in that direction. Quite frankly, I don't have any plans at all from a political point of view at this stage of my life. That does not mean that I wouldn't change my plans. I have to say that. But quite frankly, I don't have any plans in that space at the moment. But okay. I think it's really important. I think it's really, really important for all of us in life, particularly entrepreneurs like you and me and people who are listening, or those who might think of being an entrepreneur. Take a risk and go for it. And if you want to change course midstream, be brave enough to do so. And don't be afraid or worried what people would say. It's not what people say that's important. What's important is what's in your heart and what's in your passion, and to go for it. And there's nothing wrong with failure. In actual fact, over in America, and I've been at a number of these angel investment things in the States, in Boston and in California, and quite frankly, over there, the investors are not interested in even talking to you unless you've had a couple of businesses that failed, because they know then that you know what failure is like, you'll want to avoid it, and you've learned your lesson. And I if anything, Karl, out of this conversation, if there's any of your listeners, which I'm sure they are, who are half thinking of setting up in business and doing their own thing, and the reason they won't do it is because what will people think or say if I fail? I'm asking you to shift your mind from that and say to yourself, it's not about them, it's about you. And live your life, and you've got one shot at it, as far as I know, and give it your best shot. And if that's looking at setting up a business, getting involved in a franchise, go for it. Because quite frankly, the only time you'll regret it is not if you fail or when one fails. It's in 20, 30, 40 years' time when you said, geez, I was young enough, I had this idea and I didn't go for it.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.